As we've discussed here many times, language the media uses to describe people or events can affect one's perception of what happened or who someone is. Now, an advocacy group wants the news media to stop using the term accident when describing car crashes and road incidents, claiming that by calling something an accident presupposes knowledge of the event. This multi-truck pileup in the Midwest this week made news for the sheer volume of the event. ICE was the likely culprit, but even so, says Jeff Larson of the Safe Road Alliance, don't call it an accident.
I'm not saying there aren't accidents. I'm saying that the media don't know when they're reporting on an accident or an incident whether it is that fits that definition. So I'm just trying to get media to understand that the word that they are often using reflexively, without thought, is not accurate to the incident itself.
Larson, who's been a traffic reporter for decades, says he was convinced to change his terminology after several victims of car crashes contacted him to say, hey, this was no accident.
Drunk driving crashes are not chance events. Distracted driving, high-speed driving, aggressive driving, those are not chance events. Those are eminently predictable. And if that's the case, then media should not make the assumption that it is an accident.
Larson says it's a term car and insurance companies prefer, and defense lawyers love it.
Their language is, listen, these things are going to happen. This is an accident. It's okay. And that's the way we as a culture have sort of accepted it. We've accepted this as a matter of fact. You know, that people are going to have crashes. Teens are going to crash. That's just part of life.
But changing old habits is tough.
An overnight accident involving a wrong-way driver.
I actually found this really interesting. I talked to a couple of people over at WBZ today. Actually, I didn't hear back from the news director, but the news director for radio, Peter Casey, said he met with Jeff Larson, but had been thinking about this anyway, and didn't put out any dictum about it, but just said, my preferred language would be that you use the word crash when referring, and of course you do traffic on the threes, so it said, and it's made a difference. And also it's a much shorter word than accident, which is, 3 syllables and takes longer to get out. So, I think he made a good point about it. I think it's one of these things that will take some doing.
It's just really, it's a habit that people have gotten into using. I do think crash makes a lot more sense. An accident might be if you're driving through the tunnel on the way to the airport and part of the roof falls down onto your car. That was an accident or something. But, we go through this for a long time when there would be...
no, that was negligence.
Right.
Well, there was
no
negligence
accident
behind it. There could be. You trace the roots of it.
Most crashes, he said, with most crashes, there was something...
we used to have almost a reflexive thing when there would be a terrorist attack, and you would say the Al-Qaeda claimed credit for the attack or so forth. And finally, it took a while to expunge that and claim responsibility. It's not creditable or credible when, or it's not creditable when you attack somebody in terror. So this is just something you've got to work out of the lexicon, I think.
Well, a lot of it is that we have a little bit of a mob mentality in journalism. So, New York Times uses it, NPR uses it. We'll pick it up. But boy, this makes so much sense. It reminded me again that you can always learn something and change the way, even if it feels late to the party. And it also, again, words matter, and how they are described matter. Back to your point about, is it difficult to change something? Sure it is. But there was a time when we routinely said handicapped, and we now say physically challenged, and nobody thinks about it. It's because somebody thoughtful thought about it for us and said, let's look at what words you're using. So I'm all about this. I think this is a wonderful thing he's brought to our attention. And I was using crash and accident interchangeably, and I've learned my lesson.
And there's no PC part of this either. It's just kind of, this is more direct.
Well, I would say that there's usually not. But anyway, moving on.
This is so ingrained that one of the things that we all read in preparation for this was a New York Times story that was reporting that somebody driving an SUV deliberately drove into a crowd of people and then fled the scene of the accident. And that's a perfect example of how we just use the term accident without even thinking.
That is,
so,
without thinking.
I think this is a good one.
Look, I take the point. As you know, I don't like the word police. And I would just say with regard to this that if there's a problem with defense lawyers going into courtrooms and twisting the word accident to thwart justice, then that's a problem with the courts, with judges, with juries, with defense lawyers, not necessarily with the media. at some point, in some cases, this just gets into hair splitting. Is it derogatory toward a canine to call it a dog because the word dog could imply laziness? I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous,
Yeah.
but we're heading down a slippery slope
I don't
here.
think this
don't
is
think-
on the
yeah, I don't
slope at
either.
all.
I don't either.
I think this is accuracy.
Yeah.
Because it is a crash if you have done it deliberately, as Dan has just said in that article. That's not an accident. Stop using that word.
And it
I
covers
haven't
an
And I
accident.
think
It
that,
covers
and we
accident.
want to be correct. If it is an accident and you know it to be that, use that word. But most of the time, he is correct. It is a crash.
All right. So
I
there.
just wonder how I'm ever going to find time to eat lunch, worrying about all this
Well,
stuff. But go
you're
ahead.
not on the slope on this one.